In the sprawling halls of arid Lewin, where the blue mountains thrust their roots deep into the earth, young Thrain, son of Thror, walked with purpose. His beard, barely reaching his chest, was plated with simple iron beads, a stark contrast to the ornate gold and gems adorning the elders of his clan. Yet, it was not his appearance that drew curious glances from passing dwarves, but the intensity burning in his dark eyes. Thrain made his way through winding corridors, past roaring forges and bustling workshops. The constant rhythm of hammers on anvils, once a source of pride, now seemed to him a hollow echo of greater glories lost. Since the fall of Erebor, Durin's folk had carved out a life here, but Thrain knew in his bones that this was not their true home. As he approached the great library, Thrain's steps slowed. He paused before the intricately carved doors, his hand hovering over the handle. Inside lay volumes of lore stretching back to the First Age. But it was not these well-trodden histories that called to him. No, Thrain sought something deeper. Whispers of a legend that danced at the edges of memory, the halls of the endless night. The name itself seemed to carry weight, though Thrain had only caught fragments of the tale itself. Vast caverns, untouched wealth, and a curse that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest warriors. Most dismissed this tale as fancy, just a tale to keep young dwarfs from straying too far into unmapped tunnels. But Thrain sensed something more. With a deep breath, he pushed open the library doors. The musty scent of ancient parchment enveloped him as he strode past towering shelves, his eyes scanning titles in languages long forgotten by the world of men. At the far end of the chamber, a section lay shrouded in shadow, its contents deemed too dangerous or obscure for casual perusal. It was here that Thrain lingered, his fingers tracing the spines of books whose very titles sent a thrill of excitement through him. As he selected a particularly ancient book, a voice startled him from his reverie. "Careful, young lord," croaked Norrin, the wizened keeper of books. "Some knowledge is left buried." Thrain met the old dwarf's gaze steadily. "And some truths must be unearthed, no matter the cost." Norrin's bushy eyebrows rose. But he said nothing more as Thrain retreated to a secluded alcove, a heavy book cradled in his arms like a precious gem. And as he began to read, the world around him faded away, replaced by visions of shadowed depths and whispered promises of power beyond reckoning. In that moment, though he did not realize it yet, Thrain took his first step on a path that would lead him into the very heart of an ancient and terrible mystery. The legend of the halls of the endless night had taken root in his mind, and it would not let him go until he had uncovered every last secret, no matter the price he might have to pay. Later that night, the candles guttered low in Thrain's private chambers, casting long shadows across piles of ancient texts and crumbling maps. The young dwarf lord hunched over a massive book, his fingers tracing lines of script so old the ink had faded into a ghostly brown. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, testament to countless nights spent in pursuit of forgotten knowledge. The expedition of Naren the Bold, Thrain muttered, squinting at a particularly obscure passage. 70 dwarves, delving deeper into the mountain than ever before. But only silence returned. He reached for a quill, jotting down notes in a journal already bulging with scraps of parchment and hastily sketched diagrams. Each fragment of lore, no matter how small, might be the key to unlocking the mystery of the halls of the endless night. As dawn's first light began to filter through narrow air shafts, Thrain reluctantly set aside his research. The ancient texts had given him much, but he knew that books alone would not reveal all the secrets he sought. There were older, living sources of knowledge in Ered Luin, dwarfs whose memories stretched back to times when the halls of endless night were more than just a whispered legend. Thrain made his way to some deep levels of the mountain, where the oldest of their kind spent their twilight years. The corridors here were quieter, the air thick with the scent of pipeweed and the soft murmur of ancient voices. As he entered a vast chamber, carved with the likeness of long-dead heroes, Thrain's eyes fell upon a group of elderly dwarfs gathered around a smouldering pit. He approached cautiously, aware of the suspicious glances cast his way. One dwarf in particular caught his attention. Varen, whose beard was so long it pooled on the floor at his feet. Thrain had heard tales of Farron's wisdom and his long memory. "Master Farron," Thrain said, bowing his head in respect, "might I have a moment of your time?" Farron's old eyes, watery with age but still sharp, studied him carefully. "Depends on what you're after, lad." Thrain chose his words carefully. "I seek knowledge of our people's history, of expeditions long past, and colonies lost." A hush fell over the gathered elders. Farron's expression darkened, but there was a glint of something. Curiosity, perhaps, or long-buried excitement in his gaze. "The whole of endless nights. Dangerous ground you're treading, young lord," Farron said slowly. "Some things are best left buried." But Thrain was persistent, and over the next hours he coaxed fragments of tales and myths from Farron and the other elders. They spoke of a time before the fall of Erebor, when Durin's folk had sought to expand their domain within the Blue Mountains. They spoke of a colony that delved too deep and too greedily. "They found something down there," one ancient dwarf whispered. "Something that should have remained hidden." Thrain's heart raced as he pieced together the accounts. A pattern emerged, not of mere accident or misfortune, but of a deliberate act. The lost colony, some believe, had sacrificed themselves to contain something beneath a mountain. Thrain pored over his notes, cross-referencing them with the ancient texts. Slowly, a picture began to form. The halls of endless night were real. A vast network of caverns deep within arid Lewin. And somewhere in those lightless depths might lay a key to an ancient power, one that could restore his people to glory, or doom them all. As he worked, a chill ran down his spine. He could almost hear whispers at the edge of his consciousness, urging him onwards. This mystery called to him, promising answers to questions he had not yet thought to ask. Poring over a faded map, Thrain made a chilling discovery. The sealed tunnels mentioned in the mining records formed a pattern, a massive containment area deep within the mountain. It must be the halls of endless night. Standing before the statues of his ancestors, Thrain's resolve hardened. drawing his dagger, he cut a lock from his beard. "I, Thrain, son of Thror," he intoned solemnly, "swear by stone and steel that I will uncover the truth of the halls of endless night, whatever the cost." The oath hung in the air, witnessed only by the silent stone. Thrain knew the path ahead was fraught with danger, but he was determined to solve the mystery that had haunted his people for generations. But Thrain knew he could not face the challenges ahead alone. He needed a company, dwarves of skill and courage, who could be trusted with a secret that might shake the very foundations of their society. His first choice was Dwalin, a warrior of renown whose axe had tasted orc blood in 100 battles. Thrain found him in the training grounds, his muscled arms glistening with sweat as he demonstrated combat techniques to younger dwarfs. "I need your strength, Dwalin," Thrain said, pulling him aside, "and your discretion." Dwalin's eyes narrowed, but he nodded grimly. "My axe is yours, as always. But what darkness calls for such secrecy?" Next came Ori, a young scribe with a thirst for knowledge that rivaled Thrain's own. In the vast libraries, Ori's quill scratched ceaselessly, recording histories others deemed unimportant. "There are truths hidden in the deep places," Thrain whispered to him. "Will you help me uncover them?" Ori's eyes lit up with excitement. "A chance to write history, not just record it. I'm with you." Baron was an unlikely choice. A rotund chef, more at home in the kitchens than the mines. But his expertise in fungi and underground flora could prove invaluable. "We'll be traveling where few have gone before," Thrain explained. "Your knowledge of what grows in the dark could save our lives." Baron tugged at his braided beard, considering. "Aye, and someone needs to keep you lot fed. I'm in." The last to join was Nori, a dwarf with a shadowy past and fingers quicker than the eye could follow. Thrain found him in a tavern, deftly relieving a merchant of his coin purse. "I need someone who can open doors others can't," Thrain said, catching Nori's wrist before he could vanish into the crowd. Nori grinned, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Locks and traps are my speciality. This sounds like a proper adventure." In the weeks that followed, they gathered in secret, poring over maps and preparing supplies. Each brought their own unique skills to the company. Dwalin's martial prowess, Ori's scholarly knowledge, Baron's survival expertise, and Nori's roguish talents. As they worked, Thrain saw their motivations emerge. Dwalin sought to protect his people from whatever threat lurked in the depths. Ori burned with the desire to uncover lost knowledge. Baron, beneath his jovial exterior, yearned to prove his worth beyond the kitchen. And Nori simply craved the thrill of the unknown. On the eve of their departure, Thrain gathered his company in a hidden chamber. What we do for the good of all our people, he said. The path ahead is dark and dangerous, but together we will uncover the truth, the halls of endless night. The four dwarves nodded, determination etched on their faces. As one, they turned towards the depths of the mountain, ready to face whatever secrets and pearls awaited them in the forgotten halls of their ancestors. The journey to the halls of endless night was arduous. For days, Thrain led his company through abandoned mineshafts and natural caverns, delving ever deeper into the heart of Eredluin. They navigated treacherous chasms, squeezed through narrow fissures, and waded through underground streams, their path lit only by the dim glow of their mining lamps. How much further? Baron wheezed, his ample frame ill-suited for such tight passages. Not far now, Thrain replied, consulting a weathered map. The old records speak of a great cavern beyond the Silverlode seam. The entrance to the halls should be there. On the 5th day, they emerged into a vast grotto. Phosphorescent lichen clung to the walls, bathing everything in an eerie blue light. At the far end, barely visible in the gloom, stood an immense stone door. By my beard, Dwalin murmured, I've never seen craftsmanship like that. The door was a masterpiece of dwarfen artistry, its surface covered in intricate ruins depicting scenes of ancient glory. But age had taken its toll. Cracks spider-webbed across the stone, and parts of the carvings had crumbled away entirely. Thrain approached reverently, his fingers tracing the worn edges of a particularly complex ruin. The seal of Durin, he said softly, and something else, much older. Nori stepped forward, his nimble fingers probing the edges of the door. No lock I've ever seen, he admitted, but every door has its key. For hours, they worked in tense silence. Ori pored over ancient texts, translating ruins. Baron examined curious fungi growing in the cracks, while Dwalin stood guard, his axe at the ready. As the last ruin was deciphered and the final mechanism aligned, a deep rumble shook the mountain. Slowly, ponderously, the door swung open. A gust of stale air rushed out, carrying with it the musty scent of ages past. Thrain lit a torch, its flickering light barely penetrating the inky blackness beyond. "Stay close," he warned. "We know not what awaits us." They entered a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in darkness above. Their firelight revealed glimpses of breathtaking beauty. Walls veined with precious metals, crystal formations that sparkled like captured starlight. "By Durin's beard," Baron whispered in awe. "The tales didn't do it justice." As they ventured deeper, the wonder of their surroundings was tempered by a growing sense of unease. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the echo of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from unseen heights. Ori, his quill scratching furiously in his journal, was the first to notice. "Do you hear that?" he asked. The others paused, straining their ears. At first, there was nothing. Then, so faint it might have been imagination, came a sound like distant whispers, unintelligible, yet somehow urgent. "It's just the wind," Dwalin grunted, but his grip on his axe tightened. They pressed on, following a winding path that led them through a series of smaller chambers. In one, they found evidence of the lost colony: abandoned tools, rotting timbers, and a child's toy half buried in the dust of centuries. As Thrain knelt to examine a curious marking on the floor, the torch in Nori's hand flickered violently. For a brief moment, the shadows seemed to move of their own accord, taking on shapes that defied description. "Did you see?" Nori began, but a sharp gesture from Thrain silenced him. The whispers grew louder, now clearly audible. They came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in a language none could understand, yet all felt drawn to. Baron, his face pale in the torchlight, pointed to a narrow passageway ahead. "The air, it's different here. Fresher, somehow." Thrain nodded. "That's our path, then. Whatever secrets the halls of endless night hold, I wager we'll find them there." As they approached the passage, the whispers rose to a fevered pitch. The dwarves huddled closer together, each lost in their own private thoughts. With a deep breath, Thrain stepped forward into the unknown. The darkness of the passage swallowed them, and with it, their last connection to the world they knew. The narrow passage opened into a labyrinth of twisting corridors and vast chambers, even more disorientating than the last. Thrain's company soon lost all sense of direction. The very geometry of the halls seeming to shift around them. "We've passed this crystal formation thrice now," Nori grumbled, his usual confidence shaken. Ori consulted his carefully drawn map, brow furrowed. "Impossible. We've been descending steadily." Yet, as they rounded the next bend, they found themselves looking down at a cavern they traversed hours before. Baron clutched his head, groaning. "The very rock betrays us. How long have we been down here?" Time, too, it seems, was playing tricks on them. Torches burned for days without consuming fuel, while rations meant for weeks vanished in what felt like moments. Sleep came in fitful bursts, leaving them more exhausted than refreshed. It was during one such rest that the visions began. Dwalin bolted upright, axe in his hand. "Brother," he cried, reaching out to an empty space. The others watched in alarm as the warrior engaged in conversation with thin air, his face a mix of joy and disbelief. "Brother, how did you find us?" You look young." But as quickly as it began, the vision faded away, leaving Dwalin shaken and confused. Similar apparitions soon plagued them all. Ori wept as he spoke with his long-dead mother. Baron shared recipes with a wife he'd not yet met. Nori found himself confronted by victims of past crimes, their accusations echoing in the empty halls. Thrain alone seemed resistant, though the strain showed clearly on his face. "These are phantoms," he warned, "tricks of the mind. We must press on." And soon, in a vast chamber, they found the source of the curse. Mountains of gold and gems glittered in their torchlight, a treasure hoard to rival the greatest dwarven kingdoms. Yet, an otherworldly pallor clung to the riches, a sickly glow that pulsed like a living heart. Nori reached for a golden cup. Surely, a small trinket wouldn't hurt. Thrain's hand clapped down on his wrist. "Touch nothing. Can you feel it? The wrongness in the very air." Indeed, the longer they stayed in the treasure chamber, the more they felt it. A creeping corruption that whispered of power, of desires fulfilled and enemies vanquished. It tugged at their minds, urging them to claim the wealth as their own. Baron whimpered, pressing his hands over his ears. Ori's quill shook so badly he could no longer write. Even Dwalin, stalwart Dwalin, fingered his axe with an unsettling gleam in his eye. Thrain steeled himself against the influence. "We must go, now. Whatever dwells in the deep here, this cursed hoard is its snare." As they stumbled from the chamber, the whispers grew to a fever pitch, promising glory, revenge, and power beyond imagining. Each step away was a battle of will, the pull of the treasure nearly overwhelming. Only when they collapsed, gasping, in a barren corridor far from the hoard, did the voices subside. The company looked at each other with new weariness, each wondering if the others could be trusted, if they themselves could be trusted. Thrain surveyed his haggard companions. They had discovered the halls of endless night, but the price might be higher than any of them had imagined. And somewhere in the depths below Something ancient and hungry stirred, awakened by their presence. In a small alcove, away from the cursed horde, Ori pored over the ancient texts he'd brought. His eyes widened as connections formed. "Thrain," he called. "I think I understand what happened here." The company gathered around as Ori explained. The miners had delved too deep, awakening something ancient. A fragment of Morgoth's malice, left behind from the elder days. Unable to destroy it, they made a terrible choice. They sealed themselves in, Ori said, using forbidden magics to create a prison for the horror and themselves. Dwalin grunted. "Brave lads. But why not just collapse the tunnels?" Thrain's face darkened. "Because it feeds on fear and madness. Trapping it alone wouldn't be enough." Nori nodded grimly. "The visions, the whispers, it's been trying to break us. And the horde is its conduit," Baron added, surprising them all. "Did you not feel how it pulled us? Stoked our deepest desires?" Ori confirmed. Some texts speak of a hunger that corrupts. The miners' last act was to infuse their wealth with protective spells, turning it into a trap for the horror's influence. Heavy silence fell over the group as they grasped the full magnitude of their situation. They were not just explorers, but unwitting intruders in an ancient prison, face to face with an evil beyond their comprehension. Thrain's jaw set with determination. "We know our enemy now. The question is, what do we do about it?" The company exchanged uneasy glances, but they decided to press on, hoping to find a way to end the ancient evil, or at least escape its influence. As they delved deeper into the halls, days blurred together, marked only by the guttering of their torches and the growing strain on their nerves. It was Dwalin who succumbed first. During an encounter with a twisted creature that might once have been a dwarf, a wild light entered his eyes. "For Khazad Dûm," he roared, charging headlong into the fray with reckless abandon. "Dwalin, stop!" Thrain cried. But it was too late. The warrior disappeared down a dark passage. The echoes of his battle cry fading into eerie silence. And despite their searches, they never saw him again. Ori's dedication to knowledge proved to be his undoing. In a vast chamber filled with ancient texts, he became obsessed with deciphering a particular set of runes. This could be the key to everything, he muttered feverishly. As the others rested, Ori ventured deeper into the chamber alone. They awoke to find him gone, with only a hastily scribbled note explaining his decision to continue his research, promising to catch up later. Baron's fate was sealed by a cruel trick. A phantom resembling his mother appeared, leading him down a narrow side passage. The others followed, calling for him to wait, but Baron's eagerness outpaced them. They heard a cry of dismay, followed by a rumbling collapse. When they reached the passage, they found it blocked by a fallen stone. Baron trapped on the other side. Nori resisted the lure of the cursed horde longer than the others thought possible. But in a moment of weakness, as they passed the treasure chamber once more, he slipped away. They found him kneeling amidst piles of gold, eyes glazed, mumbling about the riches he would bring home. No amount of pleading could convince him to leave. As they watched in horror, the gold seemed to shift around him, slowly engulfing him, despite their best efforts to pull him free. Thrain stood alone now, the last of his company, lost to the horrors of the deep. The weight of his failure pressed down on him, along with the realization that he now faced the ancient evil alone. Yet he pressed on, determined to find a way to save his friends and end the threat that lurked in the halls of endless night. He stumbled through the oppressive darkness, his mind fraying at the edges. In a vast circular chamber, Thrain collapsed to his knees. Perhaps, he murmured, this is where it ends. My quest, my line, everything. A chill wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing his torch. In the pitch blackness, Thrain heard the scrape of metal on stone, the rustle of ancient armor. His heart pounded in his chest as a ghostly blue light began to illuminate the room. Spectral figures materialized around him. Dwarfs in archaic armor, their faces stern and their eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. They advanced on Thrain, weapons raised. So this is how it ends, Thrain thought. He struggled to his feet, determined to meet his doom standing. Have you come to guide me to the halls of our fathers? He asked, his voice steadier than ever. The ghosts encircled him, their weapons poised to strike. Thrain closed his eyes, ready for the final blow. But it never came. Not yet, son of Durin, a deep voice rumbled. Your task is not finished. Thrain's eyes snapped open. The hostile postures of the spirits had melted away, replaced by expressions of grave concern. We are not your end, Thrain, another spirit said, but perhaps your salvation and ours. As understanding dawned, Thrain realized these were the spirits of the lost colony, guides in his darkest hour. The leader of the spirits stepped forward. This ancient evil cannot be slain by mortal weapons, Thrain. It is a fragment of horror beyond physical form. Then, how can it be defeated? Thrain asked. The dwarf woman, with eyes like molten silver, spoke. It must be confronted from within. One must follow the horror to possess them, then use the strength of their will to destroy it from the inside. Thrain's blood ran cold as he grasped the implications. You mean? The first spirit nodded gravely. Yes. To defeat it, you must allow it into your very being. Only by facing it within yourself can you hope to overcome it. The spirits circled Thrain, their ethereal forms flickering in the dim light. Each one spoke, adding to the grim picture of what he must do. The ancient evil will fight you, growled a broad-shouldered spirit. It will use your memories, your fears, your deepest shames against you. A wizened dwarf woman nodded. You must be prepared to face your worst moments, relive the darkest parts of yourself. And if I falter? Thrain asked. The leader's eyes met his, filled with both compassion and steel. Then all will be lost. The evil will consume you, adding your strength to its own. It will break free and the suffering of these halls will spread across all of Middle-earth. Thrain swallowed hard, the weight of his task settling on his shoulders like a mountain. How will I know if I succeeded? A young dwarf spirit stepped forward, hope shining in his translucent eyes. If you prevail, the cursed horde will lose its taint, the whispers will fade, and we will finally be free to join our ancestors in the halls of waiting. As the ghostly light began to fade, the leader of the spirits addressed Thrain one final time. Remember, son of Durin, your greatest strength lies not in your arm or your craft, but in your heart and mind. Alone once more, but no longer lost, Thrain set off towards the heart of the halls. The whispers still plagued him, doubts still gnawed at his mind, but he now had understanding and a terrible purpose. Soon, Thrain stood at the threshold of a vast chamber, the heart of the halls of endless night. The cursed horde glittered malevolently, pulsing with an otherworldly light. At its center, something stirred. At first, it seemed like a writhing mass of shadows, formless and chaotic. But as Thrain watched, it began to take shape. It rose from the treasure like smoke into a towering figure that dwarfed even the tallest of Durin's folk. Its body was a void, darker than the deepest mine shaft, outlined by a sickly, pulsating glow. Where a face should have been, there was only a swirling vortex of darkness, punctuated by pinpricks of light that might have been eyes. Too many eyes, constantly shifting and blinking. Tendrils of shadow writhed around it, reaching out towards Thrain like grasping fingers. The very air seemed to warp around the entity, and looking at it for too long made Thrain's head spin and his stomach churn. When it spoke, its voice was a cacophony of whispers and echoes. Son of Durin, it hissed. You have come far, only to fail. Thrain gripped his axe tightly, but he knew it would be useless against this foe. The words of the spirits echoed in his mind. Taking a deep breath, Thrain stepped forward. I do not come to fight you, he declared. I come to join you. The evil paused, confusion rippling through its ever-shifting form. Then, with a sound like shattering glass and howling wind, it surged towards Thrain. The Dwarf Lord screamed as the entity poured into him, invading every fibre of his being. His mind became a battlefield, memories and fears weaponized against him. As the evil invaded Thrain's mind, he felt himself drowning in darkness. But then, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Stand firm, lad." It was Dwalin, or rather, the memory of him. The spectral form of his lost companion appeared in Thrain's mind, axe raised defiantly. More figures materialized, Ori clutching his books, Baron wielding a massive ladle like a weapon, Nori, daggers glinting in his hands. The spirits of Thrain's company stood with him, bolstering his will. "You are not alone," Ori's ghost whispered, his voice stronger than Thrain had ever heard in life. As Thrain fought back, he began to see flashes of this evil's memories. Ancient battlefields where Morgoth's armies marched, a shard of pure malevolence, cast off during the Dark Lord's defeat, seeping into the earth over ages. "I am eternal," the evil boasted, its voice reverberating through Thrain's skull. "I am the shadow that lingers, the hunger that never dies. Your kind unleashed me, and now you will serve as my vessel to cover all of Middle-earth in darkness." But Thrain clung to memories of laughter, of the warmth in the forge, of the unbreakable spirit of his people. With every ounce of his will, he pushed against the horror's influence. "I am Thrain, son of Thror," he roared, "and you have no power here." The spirits of the ancient dwarfs joined the battle, their ethereal forms surrounding Thrain, lending him their strength. Together, they fought against the encroaching darkness. The internal battle raged on, and in desperation, Thrain turned his thoughts to the cursed horde. Using the evil's own power, he reached out, willing the gold to melt, willing the gems to shatter. The chamber shook as the horde began to destroy itself. The evil shrieked, its connection to the physical world weakening. Thrain seized his moment, mustering every last bit of his strength to expel the entity from his body. With a sound like a thunderclap, the evil was torn free. It dissipated into mist, its final scream echoing through the collapsing halls. "This is not the end," it wailed. "Darkness will always return." Thrain fell to his knees, gasping. The ground shook violently, huge chunks of stone raining down. He stumbled to his feet, knowing he had to escape. The spirits of his fallen companions and the ancient dwarfs appeared around him. They guided him through crumbling passages, their ethereal hands steadying him when he stumbled. "Hurry, Thrain," Dwalin's ghost urged. As Thrain neared the entrance, he saw the spirits begin to fade, their faces peaceful at last. Ori's spectral form smiled, clutching a ghostly book to his chest. "Our story will be told," he said softly, before disappearing. The last spirit, one of the ancient dwarfs, turned to Thrain, nodding in gratitude. "You have freed us all," it said. "Remember what you have learned here." With a final burst of speed, Thrain threw himself clear of the entrance as it collapsed behind him. He lay on the rocky ground outside, breathing heavily. He was changed. New lines etched into his face, hair streaked with white, but in his eyes burned a fierce light of triumph and wisdom, hard-won. He made his way back to Ered Luin, his tale almost beyond belief. Yet the changes in him were undeniable, and soon the story of Thrain's quest into the halls of endless night spread throughout the dwarfen kingdoms. Some dismissed it as fancy, but many recognized the ring of truth in Thrain's words. The tale became a turning point in dwarfen culture. It seemed as a warning against unchecked greed and the dangers of delving too deep. But it was also celebrated in the spirit of Durin's folk, their ability to face the darkest of evils and emerge victorious. In years to come, young dwarfs would gather around the fires to hear the saga of Thrain, a dwarf who ventured into darkness and returned with light. And in the deepest minds, it's said that sometimes one can still hear the grateful whispers of the ancient spirits, finally at peace. The legacy of the halls of endless night lived on. A chapter in the grand saga of Durin's folk, a testament to the enduring strength of the dwarfs in the face of even the darkest evil